Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Chris Dost. Welcome to my channel, Biblical Languages and Literature, and I'm here with my pal Milo today, who's looking at himself on screen right now and trying to come to terms with that. In this video, we're going to be looking at feminine singular absolute nouns and adjectives in Biblical Hebrew. Feminine singular absolute nouns in Biblical Hebrew. Before we get started though, if you haven't already, I would encourage you to become a subscriber to my comprehensive Hebrew and Aramaic tier, which will give you access to all of my Hebrew and Aramaic videos and all of the English text-based videos, which include expositional studies of the Bible, as well as theological topics, conversations with biblical scholars, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here we go with Hebrew feminine singular absolute nouns and adjectives. Before we start looking at the Hebrew forms themselves, though, let's just quickly review the categories that we need to address in our analysis of Hebrew nouns and adjectives. So first, we have the category of number. And when we're analyzing for number, we're asking whether a noun or an adjective is singular, dual, or plural. And we said that singular is when we have one of something. We also saw in the previous video that singular nouns can refer to a collective. So for instance, like the word hair. So when we talk about our hair, we're actually referring to the collective of a whole bunch of individual hairs. But nevertheless, the word hair is grammatically singular in English, and we'd call it a collective, and we have those in Hebrew. But by and large, when we have singular nouns or singular adjectives, we're referring to one of something. All right, if something is dual, generally speaking, when we have a dual, it means we have two of something. Now, there are exceptions, and we'll come across dual forms. For instance, the word for sky or heaven, which is a dual in Hebrew, shamayim. And it doesn't mean that there's two of something. There's other reasons for it, and we'll talk about that some other time. And then finally, if we have three or more of something, it is a plural. So that's the category of number. We also have the category of gender, and so Hebrew nouns and adjectives are going to be masculine or feminine. Masculine or feminine. In this video, we're dealing with feminine nouns and adjectives. And then finally, we have the category of state. State. So if a noun is in the absolute form, it essentially means it lacks the definite article. And in such cases, we're going to need to ask ourselves, should the translation of the Hebrew form include the indefinite article or not? Now then we have definite nouns, and that's when it has the definite article attached. In reality, it's a little more complex than that, but that's the case most of the time with definite nouns, is that the definite article is prefixed to the noun or to the adjective. And then finally, there's the construct state. And the construct state, for now, we're calling it the possessive, even though it does way more than just indicate possession. So again, this is an oversimplification for now because we're just getting started with our study of Hebrew. But the three categories we're concerned with are number, gender, and state. So in this video, we're dealing with singular nouns and adjectives in the feminine gender in the absolute state. Now, all of the forms in this video come from the book of Jonah, and so here we're in Jonah chapter 1 and verse 3, where we get the form Onia, Onia, which means ship. And like the majority of feminine singular nouns and adjectives, for that matter, in Hebrew, it receives a hey suffix, which marks a long a vowel, indicated here by kamatz. So Onia, the a suffix is a feminine singular suffix, feminine singular suffix. And since there is no definite article attached to the beginning of the word, this is a feminine singular absolute noun, onia, which means ship or a ship. Now, in this context, we read, Vayimtza, and he found, speaking of Jonah, Vayimtza onia, and he found ship or and he found a ship. Clearly, a ship is the most sensible English translation. And he found a ship, and the text continues there. So onia is a feminine, singular, absolute noun, meaning ship. Now, before we get to the phrase ruach gdolah, and before we sign off, I'd like to just look at this one phrase in the Lenenrad Codex so that you continue to get practice reading out of biblical manuscripts. All right, so here we go. We see the end of the book of Jonah right there with a little Masoretic note. Now let's zoom in, and there we have it. The phrase we just read, u, v, Uvehema rabba. Uvehema rabba. There you go. You're reading biblical Hebrew out of a medieval manuscript. That's awesome. Well, that does it for this video. Milo wanted to say goodbye really quickly. And in our next video, we're going to continue our investigation of nouns and adjectives in Hebrew. There's a lot to consider because we have to deal with every category of number and gender and state. So we're going to be at this for a while. All right, we'll see you next time.